Okay, now we continue. This is Sunday morning, part 2. Okay, so now we've covered the cognitive process and the 5 sense doors. Now we are coming to the mind door process. And the mind door process has more diversity because it covers both the mind door process that's occurring based on a sense door object, as well as types of mind door process which are not based upon a sense object. Okay, and so the mind door process is distinguished into 2 kinds. That is the clear and what is called the obscure, or I would refer not clear. Okay, so when a clear, now I'm reading in paragraph 12, section 12, when a clear object enters the avenue of the mind door, then the vibration of the life continuum, the mind door adverting, jhavanas, and at the end of the jhavanas, registration resultants all take place. Following this, there is the subsistence, that's the drop back into the life continuum. In the case when the object is obscure or not clear, there is the drop back into the life continuum at the end of the jhavanas, without giving rise to the registration consciousness. Okay, now looking at the guide to number 12, some of the important points. Okay, I skip over the first paragraph, but go to the second paragraph where it says, the mind door process includes both the limited or sense sphere process, which is to be dealt with in sections 12 and 13, and the cognitive process in absorption. This is in the attainment of the jhanas, or the formless meditations, as well as the supramundane attainments. That is the attainment of the path and the fruit. The limited or sense sphere mind door process is itself twofold. There's the process that occurs consequent to, that is following a 5 door process, and then there is the independent process. That is a mind door process that occurs not dependent upon a previous sense door process. Okay, then the guide discusses these 2 separately. Okay, first, when one of the 5 sense doors has been impinged upon once by a sense object, after the 5 door process has ceased, we've already discussed the 5 door process, the past sense object comes into range at the mind door and sets off many sequences of mind door processes. Because these cognitive processes occur as the sequel to a 5 door process, they are known as consequent processes. And they are distinguished as 5-fold by way of the 5 sense door processes which they follow. Now, the older commentaries don't discuss at great length these consequent processes, but the authors of the Abhidhamma sub-commentaries and later treatises have explored I guess based partly on their meditative experience, partly on just reflection, some of the ways in which these consequent processes occur. Because for us to grasp an object, to comprehend an object just as it is, requires a whole sequence of consequent processes following upon the bare sense door process. For example, when I see this carton, and it seems to me that I just turn my eyes to this carton and immediately I see it's a carton of Vita Coco pure coconut water. So it seems just at a snap of a finger, I've understood that. But what's happening, according to the Abhidharmic way of understanding, that there's an incredible number of extremely rapid processes taking place, whereby I take in the shape and color of the carton, I focus upon the print, I have to register in some way the shape of the letters, then I have to interpret the letters, read to myself what the letters mean, turn the letters into words, understand what the words mean, and then apply those words to the carton with this particular color and shape, and recognize this is a carton of Vita Coco pure coconut water. So one of the Abhidharma commentators is from the last century, Lady Soyador. He lived, a Burmese monk who lived at the end of the 19th century, early 20th century. He's discussed in his treatise on the Abhidhamma, he's discussed how this distinct recognition of an object occurs. And so the recognition, of course this is always understood, does not occur in a bare five-door process itself. The bare five-door process, say an eye process, just takes in the color, shape of the object. But the way he explains it, an eye door process is followed first by what he calls a conformational mind door process, which reproduces in the mind door the object just perceived in the sense door process. Then comes a process grasping the object as a whole, then a process recognizing the color, then a process grasping the entity, grasping the nature of the object, then a process recognizing the entity, recognizing the object, then a process grasping the name, then a process recognizing the name, and there should be actually some stages later than that. I would say the process applying the name to the particular object, and then probably a process understanding what, through the application of the name, what that object is. Okay, so these are some of the types of mind door process that occur following the bare sense door process. And it's through these consequent mind door processes that we organize the chaotic data of sense experience into an orderly, meaningful world in which we live. If our capacities for cognition were just reduced to bare sense consciousness, we would just be sort of swimming in a chaos of bare sense impressions, not able to make any sense out of them. But it's because these subsequent mind or processes take place building upon the foundation of the sense door processes, that all of the momentary data of the senses come to be understood as lasting objects of particular types with meaning, a place, a context in the world in which we're situated. Okay, and now we come to the independent mind or process. And this is what occurs when any of the 6 objects enters the range of cognition entirely on its own and not as the consequence of an immediately preceding sense door process. Lady Soyador mentions a number of sources through which an object can enter the mind door without depending on an immediately preceding sense door process. For example, what we perceived earlier. So right now I could think of, my bed in my room where I live. And so here I have a visual impression of the bed, but it's not immediately following a sense perception of the bed. I can remember the tune of Ode to Joy, maybe imperfectly, but I'm not, that mind or cognition of the melody of Ode to Joy is not occurring immediately after listening to it. Okay, so that's based on what was directly perceived earlier by inference from what was directly perceived. So, for example, if I see smoke coming from a building that shouldn't be coming, I can have an inference that there will be fire there. Through what was learned by oral report, what I've heard either by reading or by report from others, and so on. So there's many ways in which we can gain these mind door processes independent of a sense door process. Okay, I want to jump down now to the passage that begins when a clear object enters. Okay, so it explains that there are 2 types of mind or process pertaining to the sense sphere, distinguished by the intensity of the object. In a process with a clear object, when the object enters the avenue of the mind door, the bhavanga vibrates and then it stops. Then, in this case, a mind door adverting consciousness turns to the object that's being apprehended within at the mind door, and that is followed directly by 7 moments of javana in which there's some kind of volitional response to the object, and then come the 2 moments of registration, after which the process drops back into the bhavanga. And then the text says, this is the case in the case of beings in the sense sphere plane, but for beings in the fine material and immaterial planes, moments of registration do not occur even when the object is exceptionally clear. I have to say, this is one of the points that I don't quite understand. I don't understand why those moments of registration don't occur for beings in the fine material plane and the immaterial plane. No, I don't think so.
Because registration would happen when you're really involved with it.
Yeah, I don't know, that no explanation is given, so, or at least I'm not acquainted with an explanation. Okay, then in the process with an obscure object, then the 2 moments of registration do not occur under any conditions. Okay, so then we have this illustrated, the difference illustrated with the table on 4.3, table 4.3. So you see, for the clear object, there's one moment of bhavanga goes by, there's the vibration, there is the arrest bhavanga, the stopping of the bhavanga, there is a mind door adverting, then there are 7 jhavanas, then 2 moments of registration, and then there comes the drop back into the bhavanga. With the obscure object, there is the bhavanga, one moment of the past bhavanga, the vibration, arrest, mind door adverting, then 7 jhavanas, and then there is the return to the bhavanga. So those are the distinction of the 2 basic types of process in the mind door. Lady Soyador has a way of distinguishing even the mind door process into 4 subordinate kinds. But this you can read on your own. It's explained in the guide here. Okay, at this point, I'll ask whether there's any questions on anything that we took in the first section, on the 5-door process, or on the mind door process. Okay, Celine?
Yeah. I'm not, could you clarify what it's meant by clear object and obscure object? Because in the same sense, in the 5-door process, they also say something like the object enters the avenue of sense after having passed a few moments or not in its prime. It just doesn't really make sense to me. Does it mean that we don't recognize what it is, or what is meant by clear and obscure?
In regard to the mind door process or the sense door process?
Well, both seem to say that an object can be fading away or not being in its prime, or being clear or obscure, and I'm not quite sure what it means for an object to be to have these qualities.
Okay, first let's take the case of the sense door process. Let me see if I could illustrate this. Actually, I think it's already illustrated in the book. No, not quite. Okay, these are material phenomena. These are chittas. And we'll say this is the eye door. Okay, now this is the visible form. Okay, the visible form is going to strike upon the eye in order to arouse an eye door process. Okay, so the material the visible form, it passes by one moment. It's too weak to strike against the eye, and so one moment of bhavanga goes by, and it strikes against the eye on the next moment. In this case, it causes the bhavanga to vibrate for 2 moments. And now, while the visible form is lasting, one, two, three, four, five. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16. Okay, so the the visible form is lasting here, and it's lasting through the duration of these 17 moments until we come to the end of the registration process, when the visible form and the second registration consciousness stop at the same time. So in this case, it's they call a very great object, or a very great presentation, right? Okay, now if the material form let's take let us say it happens to strike against the eye door at this stage in its development. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 bhavangas have gone past. It strikes the eye door, and so it causes here 2 vibrations of the bhavanga. Let's see which that belongs to. Yeah, let me just finish this. Okay, so here 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bhavangas have gone by, and then we have 2 vibrations. Then there comes the 5-door adverting eye consciousness, receiving, investigating, determining Now there's not enough room for 7 javanas. Oh, so in this case there's 1, 2, 3 determining. Okay, so this is 5-door adverting, call it A. I consciousness, call it E. Receiving consciousness. Investigating. Then there'll be determining. I think how many were there? 3? Okay, so there's no room for javanas to take place. And so we just have here 2 bhavangas. And then at the end of those bhavangas, the visible form comes to an end. And then there comes, the regular flow of the bhavanga. Does that make it clear? Okay.
My question is getting clear as so do you mean to say that these have specific time? These processes have specific duration that begin and end. So the process of the perception has a specific duration, and the appearance of the object has a specific duration. And then they're either synchronized or not synchronized. And if they're not synchronized, then we don't perceive as well.
Exactly, yeah.
And so where does it come from that objects or matter have specific duration process? That's, well, I guess...
You mean how is it determined that they have
this?
It comes in the Abhidhamma treatises.
Okay.
What is the source? The Theravada tradition says that the Abhidhamma was taught by the Buddha, but modern historical critical scholarship doesn't quite agree with that it probably came through the early generations of monks who sort of laid the foundation for the Abhidhamma. Then it would have been developed over several generations.
You have explained in somewhere in the book saying that when the matter, the visual object, has its most prime when it is in the titi stage, the present stage, not in the original stage. The chitta has its prime in the original stage, not the second, not the sthiti and bhanga stage. So at least for the first moment, the past bhavanga, always the first bhavanga is not recognized. So the idea is that the rupam, the object is not strong at the beginning, when it arises, and the chitta is not strong in the middle, so it doesn't coincide, so that bhavanga would go away. So the first would be definitely gone. That's your explanation in the book, sir. I don't know which page. And one more. The object, I think it's its own way, one world, I think, comes and passes at 17th disappears. The mind comes, and so when they come together, that's all where it's synchronizing, when it came in the middle or sixth, just a chance or previous karma. Thank you.
As for what determines the clarity or obscurity of the object in the mind door, I want to see whether there's an explanation of that here. I don't see an explanation of what distinguishes a clear object and a not clear object in the mind door. But I would think that there's just, the difference will just depend upon whether, say, an object has been repeatedly encountered in the past. Probably a whole variety of conditions will determine that. Maybe it's not so easy to just, single out one or two factors that explain that. Okay, Ed and then Stephen.
Thank you, Bhante. I'm referring here to table 4.2, and this is sort of three related questions, I suppose, all pointing in the same way, which I suppose is, what is necessary for potential karma generation? And can you stop at the jhanas, or does registration required? For example, and this could be, it could be directly, I suppose, but they cascade themselves, at least following registration, into a subsequent, limited consequent mind door process. So does a great object either generate karma directly, or can it have the potential to generate karma through subsequent processes? And then the same question applies to the great object because of jhanas. And I'm assuming that the slight and the very slight objects have no potential to generate karma. Is that synthesis correct?
According to the Abhidhamma system, it's in the jhavana phase which generates or creates karma. But I would say that if there is just a sense door process which isn't followed by a mind door process, even though the jhavana phase will generate karma in a technical sense, but the karma will be very, very weak, so it will be very unlikely to produce its effect. So it would be really after sense door processes have been taken up by the mind door process, or an independent series of mind door processes have occurred, that really strong, effective karma will be generated.
Bhante, I was hoping to ask about if this could be possible with a delayed reaction. So suppose I'm sitting and I'm spaced out, and somebody comes up to me and says, "Hey," then maybe immediately that would be a very strong object, and it would all line up, and I would have a quick registration. But suppose I'm spaced out and the person says, "Excuse me," and then a moment of time passes where I don't seem to notice, and then I realize that I've heard something, and I sort of play it back in my mind that this person has said, "Excuse me," but it's not at the moment those sound vibrations have happened. So how is that working? Because I still can get a registration of them having spoke.
These would probably be explained as things happening at a relatively gross level, rather than at the subtle level of the moment of the rapidly succeeding cognitive processes. So probably what has happened, say, to explain this, when somebody has come up to you and said, "Excuse me," in a soft voice, there's been first an ear door process which has in some way taken in the sound, but it's not been a very clear, distinct process. It hasn't made a clear, distinct impression on the mind.
But if the fact that I'm able to remember them saying it, even if it's a few seconds later, doesn't that sort of imply a full registration has been made? But it didn't happen at the moment of the sound? What
I would guess is that there was a sound door process, probably followed by a mind door process, and the mind door, probably several mind door processes, in which the object was not clear, the object was indistinct. But a subsequent mind door process would then sort of refer back to those indistinct mind door processes and then somehow grasp the object.
So this is a very sort of dynamic system.
Oh, yeah. Very complex and dynamic.
Thank you.
Okay, this gentleman,
Monday Asian. May I call your attention to table number 4.2, which is a little bit related to the same question raised
Yeah.
by the other gentleman about karmic actions. In the case of a very great object, there is enough nanoseconds or whatever in the mind that which can see and register, triggered
Yeah.
by the pas vavanga, and the whole CD is complete in the case of very great object.
Yeah.
But on the item number 15, which is a very slight object,
Yeah.
even though within that nanoseconds of mind, even though the pas vavanga has triggered many times, if you see the counting of P,
Yeah.
which push away all those Java stage,
Yeah.
and it was never registered. So there is no karmic action in the case of 15. There is no enough moment to register in the mind.
Yeah.
If that is the case, my question is, Pas Javana has no influence on the karmic actions also?
Say again, I didn't quite.
I'm just saying that
Yeah.
when it comes to the case of very slight object,
Yeah.
there won't be any chance of having this because registration process has already passed by.
There's been no registration process.
No registration
No
process.
javana, no registration.
And no karmic action.
Yeah, no karma will be generated there.
So what is the relation between the pas bhavanga and the karmic action? Whether it is wholesome or unwholesome or
The past bhavanga doesn't have any impact on the.
influence on the karmic
It doesn't
action.
have any influence on it. No.
Thank you.
The karma is generated in the javana stage, and if the javana doesn't arise, then no karma is generated. And probably, as I said earlier, just in a bare sense door process, which is not followed up by mind door processes, even though it's said that karma will be generated in the javana stage, but because there's been no follow-up, it's probably very, very weak. Very, very weak karma. Let us take Suki. Jane, do you have your? And Dina. Okay, Suki.
For the clear or vague kind of object again,
Yeah.
here, a cognitive process to occur, you need eye sensitivity, visible object, light, and then attention. And I was thinking, very simple way. If we pay attention, it's clear. If we don't pay attention, the object is very weak.
Yeah.
So doesn't attention have something to do with the object clear and then weak?
I would say that, let me just, yeah, what is meant by attention here is the turning attention in the sense of the turning of the mind to the object, rather than attention in the sense of sustained attention on the object. But certainly if there is sustained attention to the object, then the object will become even clearer. But for any object to come into the range of cognition, even in a weak process, there has to be some attention to the object, in the sense that the mind turns to the object. But when we sustain the attention on the object, then we give the opportunity for the object to present more and more of its features to the mind, and then it will become, the cognition will become clearer and clearer. Okay, I said Dina will come next.
Bhante, good morning. Is there a place for feeling, or for lack of a better word, judgment in this construct?
You mentioned
seems
two.
all mental, but there doesn't. You look at the
Yeah.
cocoa water,
Yeah.
do you also decide, I like it, I don't like
Oh,
it?
of course, yeah, yeah.
Where does feeling fall in that?
Well, first of all, feeling in the technical sense of Vedana, that is a tone, what I would call a felt tone to an experience, occurs in every citta. Every citta has some felt tone, which can be one either of pleasure or pain, that would be with the physical sensations, or it can be some with the mental cittas, or cittas apart from the physical sensations. It will be either joyful feeling or some element of displeasure, some degree of displeasure. And then as the object becomes more prominent, then those feelings will also become more prominent. And so, for example, when I see the carton of the coconut water, if I'm thirsty and then I recognize this is coconut water, then there'll be a feeling of joy, and then accompanied by maybe a desire to drink, which might be one of craving to enjoy the pleasant taste, or just, the ordinary desire just to quench my thirst. On the other hand, if I've had, say, bad experience with coconut water, maybe I reacted to it one time badly because it had spoiled when I drank it, and then I threw up or got nauseous. Then when I look at the carton of coconut water and recognize that's coconut water, then I'll feel some degree of aversion towards it. Yeah. So there's always feelings, emotions, the whole bundle of mental factors tied up in cognition. But here we're just sort of discussing, how the mind-door process, in successive stages, brings an object more and more clearly into range so that we're able to identify what it is. Okay, Sam and Ravi.
Bhante, is it during the jhavana stage that the act or action becomes wholesome, unwholesome?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's right, yeah.
Bhante, yes, with reference to the karma, generation of karma, most of this is in the mind, the mental stage, right? Chitta. Isn't the more bulk of the karmic effect on action, whether by body or speech? I mean, you can have everything in the mind, but if you don't act on it.
Well,
Because you say that
yeah.
permanent space is
There are three ways of creating karma.
karma, right?
Through bodily action, through verbal action, or through purely through the mind. Now, whenever there's any action of body or speech, there's always the activity of mind.
Yeah, behind, yeah.
Yeah, because if the body is just acting without the being activated by the mind, then no karma is created.
But in case you don't act, you have these things in the mind, but you don't act.
There's still karma is created.
Yeah, I know, but it won't be the same level, right?
Of course, there'll be differences in the type of karma, depending. We're going to be discussing karma when we come to chapter 5. Okay, Allison, and your name again was? Tom.
Bhante, I have a question. The question I have is, the objects are always there. And if you look at the objects from very great to very slight,
Yeah.
what causes Vavanga to vibrate to a rest? That's my question.
Again, I have to guess that it's through some condition out of a whole multiplicity of conditions, either causes one to turn to the object so that the object can come into range of the sense faculty, or else an object is coming, a new object is coming which wasn't present previously. Okay, to give maybe an example, okay, this drum here is always here. Now while I'm speaking, I'm not paying any attention to the drum, but maybe suddenly I just turn my head in this direction, and then I'm perceiving the drum. And so what's in the first instance, the visible form of the drum, the red and white patches of color, when I turn my head in this direction, then those colors have a chance to make to impinge upon the eye faculty, on the eye door, and then they'll cause the bhavanga to vibrate, and then the five-door inverting consciousness will arise so that I turn to that visible form, and then comes the eye process, the eye door cognitive process by which I perceive the drum. Okay, so that is where the object is always present, but because I just suddenly turn to it, then it has the chance to impinge on my sense door. On the other hand, suppose I'm sitting here and then an old friend of mine comes walking through the door, so one moment I haven't seen him for 6 months, now he comes walking through, so suddenly I see a figure coming through the door, I turn to the door, and then the visible form has the chance to impinge on the eye faculty, and then it causes an eye cognition to arise, followed by the mind door process in which I recognize that's my old friend. Does that answer the question? Yeah.
The objects are always there. Either it's invisible or it's not visible, or it's concrete or not concrete. But what causes the Vavanga from stream to pass, to vibrate, to arrest? That's my question.
Yeah, what causes it to vibrate and to become arrested is when the object impinges upon the sense door. And what causes the object to impinge on the sense door is either in some way I turn to that object and then it has a chance to strike on the sense door, or else an object which wasn't there previously comes into range of my perception. I think I answered the question. Okay, Tom, and then we take...
Bhante, I have a question on the past bhavangas.
Yeah.
Does that represent a sort of pause in the cognitive thread where no new consciousness is arising?
The past bhavangas.
Past bhavanga.
What would be the pause in the series of cognitive processes will be just what we call the flow of the bhavanga. But the past bhavanga means that it is passed after the object has come into range, or after that object has arisen and is now striking upon the sense door, but before the cognitive process can start, one bhavanga will just flow by when the object strikes.
Okay.
And then,
I understand.
After that past bhavanga, then there'll be the vibration, and then the beginning of the cognitive process.
Can I ask this question? I'm having trouble understanding exactly where does sensation and perception begin. Is that something that occurs at the beginning of the jhavanas, or does perception occur after registration?
Okay, both terms, sensation and perception, have whole ranges of meaning. So one would have to define what is meant by sensation, what is meant by perception. Maybe you could save that question for the evening, because I just will take one more question. What is your name?
Jean.
Jean, okay. One more question, then we have to get a photograph. I see that I'm being nudged, silenced.
I Yeah, see if I can make
If it's a
this
simple question.
clear. I think it's simple if I can make it clear. What I'm interested in is the independent object that you mentioned,
Yeah.
and you gave an example of seeing smoke as an object, and then thinking about fire. So in the mind door, this is all happening in the mind door, right?
Yeah,
Not the sense door.
yeah.
So you only have one mind door moment before the jhavanas.
It's a mind door adverting, turning
Yeah,
to the mind door.
Adverting. So that mind door adverting
Yeah,
sees the fire and understands it's fire all at once.
no.
I mean, I just don't see how there's enough room for it to really register.
Okay,
that
to make
here's
the inference from smoke that there's fire,
and then to really,
it would really require a whole series of mind door processes.
I see, and each one is
Yeah,
one little.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we have to break now and take the photograph. Then after lunch, then we continue with this chapter on the cognitive process.